Hi, everybody. I'm back. Yeah, I'm super excited. This is the first episode of the 2023. So, my name is Juliet, and if you have never been here before, this is UX and Tame. And I will give you a little bit of background about UX and Tame. UX and Tame started in 2020 after I went to a boot camp in UX, and I didn't know how to tell people that I was here in the market and I was excited about this career change. And since then, UX and Tem has been a space to empower and share with other designers about what it is to be in design, uh, meeting different aspects of design. So I'm super excited for this episode, first episode of season 2023. And for today, I have a amazing guest speaker. We got the chance to meet last year, and even though we wanted to have a different space at that point, it was Latinx month, and I ended up doing a big panel, and he couldn't make it. So it's like, okay, let's make it bigger. I just one for you. So I'm super excited to introduce you to Barney. Hello, hello. How are you? Nice to
Hi,
have
how
you.
are you? Thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be here. And like you said, we met about a year ago almost, and we've been trying to make this work. And I'm just happy that we were able to sync up.
Yes, finally. And again, you are my opener, my Caesar opener. So I think this is even better.
I'm
Why don't
happy
we
about
start?
that.
Yes, exactly. Why don't we start telling people who you are?
Yeah. So my name again, Barney Abramson. I was born in the Dominican Republic. Been living in the U.S. since 1989, where my family migrated to New York and then the Boston area. So I kind of grew up there. Also went to school in New England, Bridgewater State University, and for the last 20 years, I've been working as a graphic designer. It's been kind of my passion to work as a designer. And then the last 8 years, I have the great opportunity to start managing creative teams, which is something that I always wanted to do. I felt like it's just something that was natural to me. So I had the opportunity, I jumped on it. So I've been a creative manager for about 8 years now. Mostly in-house teams. I've never really worked with on the creative agency side, although I have worked with creative agencies on multiple projects throughout my career. But my focus has been in-house creative teams. So that's a little bit about me. I think
And
you wanted
what?
me to throw in a fun fact.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's my favorite question usually because people always surprise me. So yeah, something unique about you.
so one unique thing, and I think it really kind of goes with the theme of today, is that I love nature, and it's something that happened later in life. And I actually, my mother-in-law bought a grapevine that I planted in my backyard, and it's been around for like 7 years. And the first 2 years, grapevines, they don't do anything; they just kind of grow and mature, and then they die and grow again. And then after the second, maybe third year, you get fruit. And I did. The first year get, it's plenty of fruit, and then ever since that year, it has never had given any fruit or even been successful at just growing. It's been infested. It died many times. I moved it thinking that it would be better, and it ended up dying again. So, anyways, this year finally the plant is growing great, and I actually have grapes everywhere this year. So I think that's kind of a fun fact about me, that I just love nature, and that's kind of how I keep myself busy by messing with my grapevine.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I do not have a green thumb at all,
Mm.
but I do have, if you see, I have a lot of plants. But it's funny because my partner is the one to take care of the whole plants, but I'm just the one who showed them off all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely not a
The
green
perks.
thumb.
It's the
Yes.
perks.
Well, okay. So I know that you told us a little bit about you that you are in design, but how did you ended up choosing design as a career?
But my creative journey really started back in the Dominican Republic. When like all the kids were outside playing with their bikes or flying a kite or something. I remember always being in my room, drawing or sketching or painting something. And I was lucky that my dad really saw that in me, and he really wanted to kind of nourish that part of me. And I remember the first time I realized that I was creative. My brother and I were challenging each other. We were drawing like a human figure, and I drew mine, and I tried to make it perfect, and then he did his, and he's gonna hate me for this, but his thing was like a stick figure. And I said, no, you can try again. You could do it one more time. And he tried it again, and it was again a stick figure. And then I looked at mine, and I said, that's when I realized, like, okay, I definitely see the world differently. And I realized, okay, maybe design, drawing or art is a thing that I'm good at. And again, my dad throughout the years always kind of championed that in me. And whether it was a class or buying me things that I needed to draw. So that's kind of where I realized that I was creative. I didn't really take it serious. Even through high school, I didn't really spend a lot of time in art class or anything like that. I think the only times that I took an art class was to kind of hang out with my friends. They were all artists too. So I thought, it's a great way to fit in. And then when I went to college, I again did not go into design. I actually wanted to be a video producer because my dad and I had a public show that I kind of produced with him. So I thought, oh great, this is something I could do. I could be a video producer. And then when I got to college, obviously I went through a lot of turmoil, but I basically realized I didn't like the program and I didn't like video production, and spend a lot of time trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Obviously, that affected my grades. I think my freshman year, my GPA was 1.7. So I figured, well, you know what I could do? I could take an art class and I'll get an A. So I took like painting and sculpture. And then the second semester, I did the same thing. And then like when I became a junior, my advisor was like, hey, Barney, listen, you might as well just have a fine arts degree. You're halfway there. You might have to stay longer, but you might as well do that. So I did that. I ended up with a degree in fine arts with a concentration in graphic design. And then I did fulfill my other degree of communication. So I ended up with a dual major. And then ever since I graduated, I've been working professionally. When I was in New England, I worked for a pharmaceutical company first. And then the last 20 years, I've been working here. I first worked for the gaming industry for about 13, 15 years. And then the last 3.5, I've been working now for an energy company. So that's kind of my journey through design throughout the years.
Yeah, that's nice how you like, even though you have a different aspiration of designer. And I don't know what I'm thinking, because a lot of my childhood was the same. Yes, like I was in like all these art classes,
Yeah,
and every time that it was summertime, I remember just wanted to do that so much. And then I don't know when life think you think that you cannot follow that path. Yes, that is
right.
not going to take you to adulthood. But how again, when we are in the adulthood, and then thinking, okay, how we can bring joy, and
Mhm.
at least for you in university, let me do what I can do well for my grades, and ended up
Exactly.
taking your passion being what you do now. That is pretty cool. Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, all of that sound amazing, and sounds like a lot of big wins. But we know that in between all of those wins, there are a lot of fall downs and a lot of roadblocks. So,
Absolutely.
what were yours?
My wins or my fall downs.
Yeah,
I have a lot of
let's
those.
start. Yes, maybe let's maybe start with your wins. Yes.
So some of my wins throughout my career, I think, um, God, honestly, getting my first professional job. Like I remember in college thinking, like, am I ever going to graduate? And when I did, and I like very quickly, I started working for in a marketing department, being one of there was like 3 graphic designers. And I remember thinking like, wow, like someone's actually paying me to be creative. Like I felt like I was such a winner back then. So that's kind of, I would say, the first one. Obviously, one of the things that I think I am most proud of is when I worked at IGT, which is a gaming company. I worked here in Las Vegas. I remember we went through a major, like, multi-million-dollar rebrand. And I was kind of lucky enough to be part of the brand team, so we coined ourselves. It's like four of us who kind of were put together to make sure that this rebrand was going to be successful. And we worked with an amazing agency called Lander, who they're a giant in the as a creative agency, and also in rebranding companies. And the experience that I gained during that time and all the work that we did was just amazing. I think that I just grew so much from that experience, not only creatively but also confidence, like knowing that we did that, and that we had a huge budget. We were able to kind of fulfill all of our dreams we had with this rebrand. That was pretty amazing. So I would say that's one of my biggest accomplishments during that time. And then I would say the last one would be once I became a creative manager, and I was able to put together a very diverse creative team. And I mean, IGT at the time was a very diverse company already, because they're multinational, so they had folks from all over the world. But the fact that I had such a creative team with designers in Germany and Peru and Canada, Vegas, Reno, and it was so diverse, and I just felt so proud of being like, having kind of that little family for that amount of time. This is the little cup they gave me when I left IGT with all
Oh,
my.
that's nice.
It's hard to
Oh,
see, but this is all my.
yeah,
A
that's
shout
a
out,
cute. That's so cute.
yeah, a shout out to my creative team from IGT. I still love you guys. But yeah, that would be my. And I obviously I've kept that. I've been a manager since, so I feel like I found my calling when it comes to that. So those would be my biggest wins during my career, I would say. I mean,
Yeah,
I obviously, sorry to cut you off. I mean, I've won many awards, and
yes, I was going to ask you about that. He's like, what is that?
I've done great work. We did a sustainability project with the local RTC, where we rebranded a bus with a beautiful RTC story. I worked with a very talented designer from Platte Mountain, and that project won several awards, and I still see the bus driving around my city. So for me to like be driving around with my kids and that bus goes by, it's like a reminder that what I do has impact. And so anyway, so that would be another big win that I have to add.
Yeah, but again, like I was saying in the beginning, it's not that after with all those wings come a lot of up and downs. Yes, like
Absolutely.
and I feel like it's sometimes so easy to say like, oh, look at everything that this person has done. Like
Mhm.
sometimes you can just see the shining side from people's career, people's life. um, but there is always something behind the scene that
Yeah.
it happened. So what would you say there were the roadblocks, or yeah, things that happen in the way?
Yeah, my God. I mean, I had many, of course, but I think the biggest one, if I were to like single out the one that I think one that I had to overcome, it was mostly my own personal insecurities, um, and I think a lot of that came from obviously being when I became a professional, I found myself almost always being the only kind of person of color in the room. I was always the only black person, the only Spanish person in the room. My first job, I think I was the only black person in the entire department. And throughout my career, that I've had that same experience. So, kind of feeling alone, feeling like I had to figure things out for myself. I remember at one point, I had a director at the time, and I was feeling very lost in my career. And I went to him and said, "Hey, will you mind being a mentor to me? I'm looking for someone to kind of guide me through my career. I felt like I needed just to figure out the next step, right? And not having that role model at home, right? My dad worked in a mill his whole life. My mom had many odd jobs, worked at McDonald's and other places. So I didn't really come with that backing. I didn't have that experience at home. So I was looking for this person to kind of mentor me and maybe give me some pointers. And I remember him telling me, Barney, I can't mentor you. You're doing the right thing. Just keep going. And I remember feeling very like just empty inside and thinking like, wow, I'm just gonna have to figure this out on my own. So for me, obviously, again, being an immigrant, being Latino, being a person of color, was throughout my entire career was always a challenge. And so I learned and I realized that I needed to educate myself. I needed to kind of try harder, do more, read. I read all the time, just to overcome a lot of my insecurities. So that was definitely a major roadblock that I encounter. And then the other one would be stress, learning how to manage stress as a designer, especially, it's funny because designers, we thrive on, doing a good job. If we're part of a big project or a big team and we feel like that we can contribute, we just want to give more of ourselves, right? And I remember kind of prioritizing my career more than other things in life, and always thinking that, this is kind of what gave me value, was having this job or having this project that I finished, or this career was kind of the things that gave me value. And I found myself just very stressed and very kind of overextended in my professional life. And the stress drove me to honestly to quitting my job of 10 plus years, and trying to figure out other ways or really kind of changing my lifestyle to be able to deal with that stress. So for sure, insecurities about my accent, insecurities about being Latino, insecurities about being the only person of color in a creative team or department was the first thing. And then later on, it was stress.
Hmm. And I don't know if is this relevant to you, but I feel like as both of us being Latinx, and there
Hmm.
is a lot of pressure, and I feel like this comes from back home. Like you have to work, you have to keep showing. Who cares if you're
Absolutely.
sick? Who cares what is happening? Like you need
Yeah.
to show up, yes. And that got really tied. To yeah, like you were mentioning, that value. And if you are on top of that, I mean, this is just we if I were still in Colombia, but then
Hmm.
now you are on the top is like being an immigrant, like
Right.
that you have to show more that you are capable and that you can do it. And that's
Hmm.
just like working extra hours, or again,
Right.
if you're sick, you just keep showing up, because how else can I show that I have value?
Exactly.
So, the topic of our conversation today is mental health and design. So, when these mental health start like coming into your life to be on a top rank of importance, and say like, this is it, I cannot continue
Right.
what's happening. Yeah.
I mean, I think it started with me. Well, actually, I can't even take credit for that. I have to give all the credit to my wife. My wife worked as an officer. Well, so sorry, she worked for the local police department for many, many years, and kind of halfway through her career, ended up realizing that that wasn't her passion, and she didn't really love what she was doing, and decided to kind of quit that career after like 15 years, and then go back to school and become a marriage and family therapist. So through her process, her journey of becoming a therapist, I kind of came along for that ride. In the beginning, I remember reading the same books. I was like her proofreader for her papers, and I started kind of learning and absorbing more of like what it means to take care of your mental health. I just didn't really. I mean, again, being a Latino in our culture, that wasn't something that, especially for
What does
Dominicans,
that mean? Yeah. Like, what does
especially
this mean? Yeah.
especially for Dominicans, like, why are you stressing? Just get over it type of mentality, right? And then I was always like the happy-go-lucky person, and I thought that if I was happy and I was positive, that everything was gonna be okay. And I felt like I realized through this journey my wife was going through that that was kind of like my mask, right? That was a thing that I was putting on to get through life, and because I didn't want to deal with whatever it was, challenge or a person or a thing. So I kind of had this mask on of being like the happy-go-lucky, always positive. I remember on my resume I wrote, uh, "I'm one not to rock the boat" or something like that, because I wanted to give that perception that I was a likable person, and I realized through her journey that I was kind of hiding behind this thing. So that kind of led to a lot more self-discovery, a lot more reading, And again, through her 3 to 4 years of going through that process, I just learned a lot, and I realized that life is better when we care about each other. Life is better when we care about people. I believe in humanity, and I think that being, you know, caring about the person next to you, it's better than the other way around. I also feel like we all go through different types of trauma growing up. As an immigrant living in a third world country back in the days, when I growing up in the DR, um, uh, so going through trauma through life, I think we that's kind of like what develops this kind of mask and armor that we put on. And I just didn't want to have any of that. I wanted to be my authentic self at work, at home, with my family. And I remember everyone would always say to me like, oh wow, you're so different at home than at work, or you're so different with your friends than when you're at your job. And I realized again that it was me kind of putting this persona um, uh, forward, and I didn't want to be that way anymore. And that's kind of where my mental health journey started, just kind of self discovery. And then once I kind of ingested that knowledge, I kind of wanted to give it to others. So that's kind of how I got here with that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think so powerful to have someone beside you can help you to go through that journey too, and kind of help both of you to be aware of what is happening. But
Absolutely.
kind of going back a little bit about your 10 years job that you ended up leaving,
Hmm.
is that why the reason that you ended up leaving for like?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, so again, going back to my, when I worked at IGT, again, amazing company. I had an amazing team. I was very proud of the work that I was doing and the work the team was getting done. The last couple years, we had, again, this is a very big company. We had multiple trade shows, and my team was responsible for a lot of that work, and we were pushing out dozens, if not hundreds, of games a year. So I was working for a marketing team, and my team was responsible for creating collateral for sales and events and a bunch of other things, from video to web to booth designs to all kinds of print collateral. And again, it was great work, and I felt very proud about it. But I was going like at 120 miles an hour. I was just kind of burning the midnight oil. I was always available. My phone was always with me. I would work weekends. If I had to work late, I just always made myself available. And I remember the stress just building and building. And my wife tells me now that I used to be such a grumpy guy, and I was like, I wasn't grumpy. I was happy. I was always happy. And I just didn't see it, for a long time. This pressure of doing a good job and keeping this engine going was just eating me up inside. And I actually ended up having very like I feel like my stress became more a physical stress. So I remember always having stomach issues, and I think that's kind of where I carry most of my stress is in my stomach. I was always having stomach issues, and I was always I thought I had a hernia or something, and then once I left that job, that discomfort and pain went away, and that's when I kind of put two and two together. Like, wow, my body was telling me that I needed to do something. So I feel like I was at the very edge of maybe having a breakdown or something. So I'm glad that I was able to like learn, kind of to go through that self-discovery process and make a change. So yeah, so I found something that was a little bit slower pace. I still get to manage a creative team. I still get to do amazing work, but it's a slower pace. It allows me to do some of the things that I'm doing now that I love.
Yeah, I love it, and I mean, we sometimes we don't put together those thoughts about what our body's telling you and what is happening around. And I would say it happens to me all the time, and that's how I see the stress, or I see that the things are affecting me around my life um, when I'm sick. And usually, yes, it has to do a lot of with my stomach.
Hmm.
But again, I think it comes again we we grow up. Yes, it's like, and again, we those things are not together. Like,
Right.
how do you feel physically and what is happening around? and it's just forget it. You will be okay. Don't worry about it. Just keep
Right.
going. I feel like such a normal thing, and so I'm glad that we're talking, and I think a lot of people are talking about this, and this is
Right.
real, and how we can be all aware about it. Um,
Absolutely.
but I think something that I feel like is really relevant for you and me, and really important is um, we are underrepresented communities where we are in this moment. Yeah. So in
Yep.
Canada, Vancouver, I'm Colombian. Um, and even though the Latinx community keeps growing in Canada, uh,
Hmm.
and the Colombian community keeps growing, we are still underrepresented. And as we were mentioning at the beginning, as for immigrants, we need to put more work, more hours. So
Right.
why is this topic so relevant and important to be discussed and shared with underrepresented communities?
Well, I actually made a post recently about something that Linguizamo said on. I think he was hosting the Daily Show for a week, and during that show, he talked about, obviously, Linguizamo is very proud to be Latino, and he talked about how Latinos are underrepresented in media, and I think it translates to what you were saying. Translates to the design industry. I believe like only 3 to 7% of people of color identify as designers. Um, so we're very tiny population within this big industry. And when it comes to like the bigger picture, like Linguizamo was saying, I believe like he said something like Latinos only get like 10% of, maybe it was even lower than that, but about 10% of the stories being told are about Latinos, meaning that the other 90%, it's not us. And I actually think the number was a lot lower than that. So when we are when we're not represented in the media, we're not represented in social media, or um, we unfortunately have less value for ourselves, and others have less value for what we have to offer, which is why I think it's important to tell stories about the Latino experience, tell stories about immigrants. I think immigrant stories are the best stories. I think a lot of us are immigrants in other countries, and telling those stories not only helps you or us get that story out and share it with the world, but it also helps the generation coming behind us, right? Like I said before, I didn't have a mentor in my entire career. I had great managers, I had great directors, had great VPs, but I never had a mentor. I never had a manager of color, a creative designer that I looked up to that was Latino or Black. I never had that in my career. So for me to, be 20 plus years in, to be able to write about my experience, or mentor, which is something that I love doing now, which is kind of how we met. Um, these are the things that I feel that's why we need to have this conversation. That's why I love your podcast. I mean, I hope you saw my excitement when I found you on ADP List, and I saw your podcast on YouTube, and I just got so excited. I'm like, oh my God, I have to meet this person, because you were telling the stories that people need to hear. Now, of course, you talk to people from all over, but um, you know, I love your accent. I love your style. And that was kind of what drew me. And I'm like, yes, this person's doing it. And I have to do the same. So anyways, I think it's very important for us to tell our stories in order to help that generation coming behind us, and let them know that, we matter. We have stories that matter, and that we can contribute. I mean, we can equally contribute. We're equally as talented. We just need the opportunity. We just need to have that opportunity. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
what,
I
yeah.
love it. I mean, I remember when you messaged me like you want to be part of my podcast. Like, yes, of
I was so
course,
excited.
like yes. And I feel like when you talk about insecurities and about the accent, it's like, oh my goodness, I've been dealing with this my whole life. Yes, like
Yeah.
I was so bad at English at school. I remember crying one day because
Mm,
I couldn't say anything, and I sound dumb and whatever. And then
right,
you move
right, right.
here, and then you think that you know English, and then you realize you don't know anything, and you're
Yep.
afraid to talk. And I think for me to be at this point where I can be in front of a microphone and talk to people and honestly don't care about if I do a mistake or if
Yep.
I don't sound with the perfect accent. It's okay because that's me. Yes, that's kind of my uniqueness of bringing my Spanish accent and my background of being Colombian and Latina
Mhm.
to this. So I love it. I love it that we are so excited about who we are
Yeah.
and our uniqueness.
I can tell you, I can tell you when I first realized like that this was a thing that I needed to just get over. Remember again going back to working at IGT just because I was there for so long. I remember where my department was very, again, the company was very diverse. We were a multinational company, and I remember being in a meeting. Someone was like, we had a Dutch person, we had someone from Kazakhstan, we had someone from, me being Dominican, we had Filipino people, Mexican people, all in this one room, and everyone had an accent, and most of them didn't care. Some of them traveled from their native country to be at this meeting, and it was like one of those like company meetings that brought everyone together. And I remember being in this room with everyone with an accent and thinking like, wow, like I could, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter if you have a message, if you have something you have to say it the best way you can. Obviously you can work on it, you can improve, but don't let that stop you from moving forward, because honestly people don't really care that much.
I mean, we don't. I don't care. It's like
I
when
don't
people
now.
is like, I don't care how you sound. I mean, you're doing your best. You're trying.
Exactly.
You are asking questions. You are like putting yourself out. It's like
Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um. So I know that we have talked a little bit about everything, but we have your wins, we have the roadblocks, we have
Yeah.
like how did you end up and like being aware about your mental health and putting it like as a big thing in your life. uh, but what type of stressors have you have to deal with, and how you were aware that they existed and they were like stressors? Yes, because
Yeah.
again we're coming back, it's like it's normal to be stressed out and work all of over time. That is normal. Yes, like it's
Right.
like that thing. So when did you realize, oh, this is not normal, this is not
Right.
how I should be feeling?
I mean, I'll be 100% honest with you. It was straight up my blood pressure. I remember my job had one of those like health weeks, and they had brought folks into, So again, these programs do work. So if anybody from HR or any company leaders are listening, these programs do work. They catch a lot of things. But I remember going in, check my blood pressure is very high, and I'm like, how could my blood pressure be high? I'm like, I feel very good. I'm healthy guy. I remember back then I was an avid runner. I was running marathons, all half marathons, all the time, and I felt like I was very healthy, but my blood pressure was very high. So I started kind of this process of like going to my doctor, getting checked, and all those things. And I remember getting on medication and going through this process of finding like the right medication. And for a long time, I thought this is something that maybe was passed down from my dad or mom. And then I remember having a conversation with them, and they're like, "No, I don't have high blood pressure. My dad didn't either." So then I'm like, "Okay, so that's a me thing." How did this happen, right? And I remember my doctor telling me like, "Hey, Barney, honestly, after this whole thing we've done, after this whole process, it's got to be your stress. Like, how can we bring down your stress?" And that's when I realized, like, okay, well, maybe that's what it is. Obviously, at the time, I was very resistant to that, and then remember going through like a trade show season and having just a lot of pressure in my stomach, a lot of discomfort, um, this kind of dread of going into work certain days, feeling like, oh my god, I have to go in, or always having excuses to take a day off. And I realized like I'm definitely not, I'm not coping very well. And again, I changed my diet. I started running more, going back to the gym. I thought all these things would help, but I still was not very aware or accepting of my diagnosis, and it was that it was stress. I was kind of reaching that burnout point, and I wasn't really I was not self-aware about that. So So that's kind of how it started. It was through my blood pressure, realizing that it was, a little bit out of control, having to get it under control. I needed to do things differently, and lowering my stress kind of became a thing. And then the other major thing that happened in my life, that besides, so again, stress at work, my wife going through this process, right, of becoming a therapist. And then the third thing was my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And then when that happened, and one of the leading causes of Parkinson's, it's also stress, right, and trauma and all these other things, obviously. And I realized, like, okay, I cannot keep going down this path. I cannot just kind of push it to the side. I cannot just forget it and deal with it. I just needed to do something. So it was really a combination of many things through, like, I would say maybe a 3-year time frame. But I wish I knew what I know now back then, because I would have done things a lot differently.
Yeah, I mean, again, our body keeps talking to us and we
Mhm.
keep ignoring, and the doctors say this and we keep ignoring.
Oh,
It's like
absolutely.
how it could be work. Like, I've been doing this forever and it never
Yep.
was an issue. Yes. And I mean, not just work, but I think so many things that happen in our life. And uh, I mean, it's just easy to keep working and just
Yeah.
forget about it,
Yeah.
because that's what we keep doing. Um, so now that we have kind of all the pieces together, and for us, again, it's so close to our heart to talk about underrepresented folks and community, what would you say that are your three, I wouldn't say top, but your
Yes.
three tips that kind of are getting you into design? And I know that, but I feel like these topics or tips that you're going to say can be useful in any
Yeah.
career. But just
Absolutely.
because we are designer, we just talk about design. But how to get it into design and make mental health your first priority? Because I feel like, again, I switched careers no long ago. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, it's going to be at 3 years, and changing careers, finding a job, being new in the market is not easy. And then you put all
Right.
the pressure of, like, um, I have to perform, I have to be the best. How do we manage all of this?
That's a great question, and I'm glad that you asked that, because I feel like that's kind of the heart of kind of our conversation here. So I think so. Some of the things throughout the years that I've it's funny, because these are the things that I would tell some of my employees or my designers, that I wasn't really they were not advice. It was not an advice that I was taking for myself, but some of the advices that I would always tell them would be uh, to find happiness outside of work, right? Just find a passion outside of work. Do not look at your job. Now, listen, there may be a career or a job that may bring you that happiness. You might be your own boss, or you might work. Let's say um, you always wanted to work for a particular company and so there are ways to have a busy lifestyle, let's say, and cope very well, and everyone copes differently, but for sure you have to find a you have to find happiness outside of work, so whether that's a hobby, or like for me, I remember what I do now. Again, I love nature. I love going for walks. I love photography. It's another thing that I love, and I feel like photography. It's a great, and I know photography is still and a creative thing, but to me, it was something that I could do outside of work. So finding that thing outside of work, that passion. It could be a creative. It could be creative. It could be, again, could be photography. It could be painting, but it could also just be something outside of the creative field. It's just something that brings you happiness. So don't look at your job as like that place that's going to make you happy, because it might not always be that way. We might not always find that right job that's going to give you both. So definitely, that's one thing that's going to help you release that creative stress. I think that if you find a hobby outside of work, that it is a creative hobby, could be an outlet for you. So, like, we get all this, typically designers are not designing for themselves, right? We don't design for us. We're designing for a client, we're designing for a company, we're designing for a product, right? So having that creative outlet outside of work, I think is necessary so that you can get those ideas out of your head. Maybe you have a blog, maybe you write, maybe you curate art on Instagram or Pinterest. I don't know. Find a hobby outside of work that brings you happiness so that you can kind of, do both and find that outlet for you. So that would be one thing. I think another important thing is find ways to become your authentic self at work. Um, I know that's hard, and I think there's a balance. Obviously, you don't want to go to work and just be like feet up and be get yourself fired, right? There's a balance, right? But especially as a Latino or person of color, I think we tend to mask a lot when we are at work, and we try to assimilate as much as possible. I think I grew up in the generation where assimilation was like the thing, right? Speak English, don't say this, don't do that, right? But I think that over time is not successful and attainable. So I think that being your authentic self at work and at home is the best way to, again, lower stress and have a and really manage your mental health. Uh, I went through the same thing myself. I took a lot of self discovery. To me, some of the things that helped was reading. I read a lot of books, and I would love to give you my top books later on before we end up. But reading was a way for me to kind of learn how I was feeling, how I was thinking, and also understanding like the world around me, and understanding that a lot of things were just not my fault. And so yeah, being your authentic self at work would be the second thing. And then God, the last thing, I think I kind of combined them all into this too, but I think I wrote down one last thing here. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Um, uh, yeah, so I mean, I think the last thing that I would say is, we're creative people. Find a creative community. That's another way you're gonna again lower stress and feel part of something bigger. I think that during COVID, I know I started really just putting myself out there. I joined many Slack groups like Where the Black Designers, Tech Korea, and a bunch of other ones that I joined. I started meeting dozens of people. I think that's how my mentoring started, was just through meeting younger designers. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, and I'm active on a lot of groups on LinkedIn where we talk about design, we share ideas. For example, Pepsi just went through a rebrand, and I posted about that, and like 50 to 100 comments later, people were still keeping this debate going, and it was just so good to just talk about creative stuff. It has nothing to do with my job, has nothing to do with my life at home, but it has something to do with the passion of being a creative person. And some of the conversations we had during that post were just amazing. So again, find a community, be your authentic self, and find happiness outside of work would be the three things. Again, they apply to just about everyone. But I think that second one, being your authentic self, for sure applies to, Latinos and people of color, because I think, sometimes we tend to mask a little too much to kind of get through life. So
Oh my goodness, my mouse is not working. I think I have to change the battery, and I keep dealing with this all day.
oh, no worries.
I love this. I think, again, when you were mentioning that passion outside of work, while
Yeah.
I was working in retail, this is what it kept me alive and kept me happy for so long. And for me, the same as you was photography. Yes, like um, I love just to go outside and make people look amazing. And it's not that I do anything. I think it's just make them feel comfortable, and then when they see their pictures, like, do I look this good? It's like, yeah, you've been always looking this good. So I think that for me is a great one.
Yeah.
The authentic self, it takes, like you were saying, a lot of like reading, being critical about the things that happen, like the
Mhm.
thoughts that go to your mind, and see, for me, sometimes had to do a lot of with, like, I'm talking with someone and it's like, I can see in my brain, oh, why did I say that?
Yes, I know. I
Why
know.
did I say this? I
Yeah.
would never say this. I would never act like that. So I think for me is to stop in those seconds and say, okay, this is not me. I shouldn't be doing this
Right.
anymore. So a lot of taking in consideration your thoughts and what you're doing and be intentional, I think
Hmm.
takes a bit. And community, I mean, you can put community in your passion and in being authentic. Like this is communities being always really powerful. And like you were saying,
Yeah.
for me, uh, while we were like 2020 and 2021, when you were not like meeting people outside,
Right.
honestly, it was more successful for me to meet people online
Yeah.
than it has been meeting people in person. I mean, this is how I ended up with my podcast. This is how I ended up with so many of the projects that I have in the side is because I met people online.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The community. Yes, I will say yes. I would like that book list that you're talking about.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. You wanted to tell it to me, or you want me to send it and I copy it on the blog? I mean, if you have maybe one or two books that you
Yeah,
want
I'll
to
tell
like,
you right now. Yeah, I'll give you a couple. I mean, I'll give you two right now. So like the one book that to me completely like changed the way that I, well, it helped me do a lot of self discovery, and it's called Psycho Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and I'll send you the link if you wanted to share it. But this book's, the study of psycho cybernetics is kind of the study of the self. So it was really about like who I am, how I feel, and why humans do certain things. And it was a hard book to read, and even the author tells you to like take some time and digest a chapter, because it's just very deep, heavy stuff. But I feel like getting through that book, and I've read it 3 times now, getting through that book really helped me understand why I did certain things and kind of break away from some of this insecurities and thoughts and ideas that I had in my mind that they were just living rent free in my head, right? So that's definitely a really important book. The other really important book that I would say is and this is very different, it's called Happy Money by Ken Honda. And again, me, I grew up in the Dominican Republic till the age of 10. I was very poor growing up, so I had a lot of money issues that I didn't know I had. I always had this money figure in my mind, like by this age I need to make this much money. And I was like, like whatever I got to do, if I need 2 jobs, if I have to have a side hustle and a website and a this, because I wanted to hit that figure. And then I realized through this book that a lot of the money, a lot of the what was driving me were all these money issues that I didn't know I had. And Happy Money talks about just that, about how to live with the concept of money in a happy way. And it just teaches you that some money's happy, some it's not, and you should probably do away with the one that's not. So if it's not serving you, do away with it. So that would be my other book. Another one, again, since we're talking about people of color, is the Black Experience in Design, an amazing book that it's there's many authors, so I won't read them all, but it's another great book that talks about kind of the disparity between people of color in the design industry. It talks about it gives great stories and quotables and statistics about how we are underrepresented in the industry. So I think that reading that book really helps you understand kind of where you sit in the design landscape, and then it also gives you an idea of like, okay, what doors do I have to open and what ceilings I have to break to move forward. And then you realize that sometimes we're not successful not because of us, not because of the work we put in, but because the system is not made for us to be successful sometimes. So this book is an amazing book. I would highly recommend it.
love
So
it. Yes.
those are my three.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, okay, that's okay. Of course, no, I love it. I have them on my list. I'm looking books for reading for this year. So this is great. I love it. This has been so good. Thank you so much, Barney. I imagine a lot of people is like, where can I talk to Barney if I have any questions? How can we find you?
Well, I'm pretty much everywhere. Again, I like to be, I started a writing journey last year, and I decided that I was going to expose myself more. So I can be found, obviously, I have my website, barneyabramson.com. And there you can find pretty much everything that I'm doing, whether it is my mentoring, my projects, my design. So a little bit of everything there. I also have a personal blog about my life story that I write about on barneyabramson.com. I'm also obviously on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn. LinkedIn for sure is a great place to find me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is an app that the last couple of years has really just kind of taken over. We have a lot of young energy coming into LinkedIn. It's becoming more social. The topics are different. No one's just talking about their work and what projects and products their companies are pushing out. It's more communal. People are having telling stories there. So obviously, Barney Abramson at LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you can find me. And then one thing that I did want to say is that I've actually been working on a workshop for a little while now. That it's actually called Design and Mental Health. And it's funny that you named this podcast that. I saw it and I was like shocked. I'm like, oh my god, we're like in sync here. But my wife being a therapist and me being a designer, we are kind of joining forces. We're doing a workshop together. It's probably going to be an ADP list, if not, maybe here live on LinkedIn. But for that, please go to my Instagram. It's Barney Abramson 01, and my link in bio. You can register for the workshop. It'll probably happen at the end of the summer, but we'll be talking about exactly the same topics we're talking about here. I'll be focusing on design and like job readiness, especially for people of color. Sometimes we don't have that experience at home, so we kind of make mistakes that we shouldn't be making because we're just not prepared. So I'll be talking about that and other design topics, and then my wife will be talking about mental health, managing stress, how to avoid burnout, and a bunch of other topics. So that would be the place to find me, and that again, that's on my Instagram at Barney Abramson 01, and in my link in bio, you can find all the information about that. So
Perfect. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, I will share all of this in the different places that this is being live streamed. Uh, I will say because last year I didn't have you on my Latinx
I know, man. I was so
table.
upset.
It's funny because we were chatting. It's like, oh, and you were the one who told me. It's like, Latinx month is coming. What are you doing? I'm like, oh, let's do
I
something.
know. I got so excited.
Yes. So anyway, this year, definitely I'm having you on my guest list for
Okay.
sure.
Okay, please.
But thank you so much again for taking the time and sharing about you, your career, your life, your books. This has been so good. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I am honored to be here. Honestly, like I've been dreaming about this for a while. I think you're doing great. I love everything you're doing. I'm obsessed with your podcast. Keep up the good work, and I would love to do this again with you. So thank you
Yeah,
again.
let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.